My name is Eileen Minogue, and I am the Executive Director for the Book Fairies, and I want to welcome everyone here today. Today, we are excited to have Annie Barrows, author of Iggy and Ivy and Bean. I'm sorry about that. I do want to warn everybody that we are in the middle of a hurricane, so if we lose power, we may have to reschedule, but for now, we're going to move forward and hope that Mother Nature cooperates with us. Annie is in California, so she's not dealing with the hurricane issues that we're having. She lives there with her husband and 2 daughters. Annie has written several nonfiction topics ranging from fortune telling, very interesting, to opera, crazy, right? Before writing any of her children's books. In 2006, the first book she wrote was Ivy and Bean, and it was followed by 9 others, which is pretty cool. I did not know, I'm sure many people don't know, that Ivy and Bean has been translated into 14 different languages. That's amazing, so amazing. So today, Annie will be reading from Iggy, and I wanna welcome her, and everybody strap in and enjoy her time and effort. At the end, we'll take questions from everybody. So start putting your questions in the chat group. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Hi, folks. Hi, peoples. I'm Annie Barrows, and sorry, your wind is blowing. My wind is not blowing. Here in California, we don't have hurricanes. We only have earthquakes. I'll let you know if we have one of those while I'm talking to you. So what Eileen said is 100% true. I am Annie Barrows, and that means that I am the author of Ivy and Bean. But I'm also the author of, oh my gosh, this is so hard to do. This gets harder every time I do it because there's just so many Ivy and Bean books. There are 11 of them. I wrote all of these books. These are all the Ivy and Bean books together. And oh gosh, they're so heavy. And I thought I should stop because they were getting so heavy, these Ivy and Bean books. But then I just got the greatest idea. So we haven't really come to the end of Ivy and Bean. And in fact, there's going to be another Ivy and Bean book next spring. It's called Ivy and Bean Get to Work. But of course, it's not exactly about work. Would I write a book about work? No, I would not. It's about treasure hunting, really. So in addition to the Ivy and Bean books, I have also written a book called The Magic Half for kids that are a little bit older. This is about a kid named Mary who has a terrible life because she has 2 older twin brothers and 2 younger twin sisters. And one day, completely understandably, she kind of loses her mind and hits one of her brothers over the head with a shovel and is sent to her room. While she's in her room, she sees something kind of shining on the wall, and she picks it up and she realizes it's a lens from a pair of glasses. She holds the lens up to her eye, and suddenly she goes back in time. So the story is really about what happens to her when she meets the people who lived in her house 75 years earlier. Now, after I had written a lot of Ivy and Bean books, and I had written The Magic Half and its sequel, Magic in the Mix, I was kind of thinking about what should I write next? What should I write next? And one thing that has been happening in my life for about 30 years is that I go to these family parties. And, you know, family parties, there are lots of kids around, cousins, all that sort of thing, nieces, nephews, that kind of thing. And, you know, I'm a children's book writer. I think that people should be gathered, all the kids should be gathered around me and listening to my stories. But when I go to a family party, that isn't what happened. What happens is that all the kids gather around my husband, Jeffrey, and listen to his stories. After, you know, as I say, about 30 years of this, I began to get a little bit jealous. So I did what authors all throughout time have done. I decided to steal his stories and use them in a book of mine. So that's what I did. This is the best of Iggy, and it's about a 9-year-old kid named Iggy. And he does a lot of things that could be, well, sometimes are called, well, bad. He doesn't really mean to do bad things. it just sort of happens that he does them. You'll understand this more when I read you a little bit from the book, which I'm going to do in just a minute. But I want to say one thing. I want to make one thing perfectly clear, which is that I never did any of the things in this book because I was really, really good. Never did anything wrong. Good, sweet, kind. Grown-ups loved me. You know, birds landed on my fingertips. Grown-ups gave me candy for no reason because I was incredibly good. So I just don't want you to think that I'm getting these ideas from things that I did when I was little. However, the person that I'm married to, that guy who tells all the stories to kids, he was really bad. Thank goodness, because otherwise I would have no idea how to write a book like this. So now I'm going to read to you a little bit from the best of Iggy. And if you have any questions at the end, I'll be happy to answer them. Now, one other thing I need to say is that when you're reading a book, you're supposed to read from the beginning of the book. I'm not going to do that. I'm the author. I can do whatever I want. So I'm going to be reading from chapter 9 of The Best of Iggy. Okay? You ready? It all began one day after school. Most afternoons, Iggy hung out with his friends Diego or Aiden or Arch or somebody else he liked. Or he had soccer, or he went with his mom to pick up Molly or take Mary Bell to dance class. Those are his sisters. But on this day, his mom had a meeting. Mary Bell and her friend Haley were going to walk Iggy home from school and watch him for 2 hours until his mom got home. Iggy didn't like it. What did watch mean anyway? Did it mean they were going to tell him what to do? They'd better not. Maribel was only 2.5 years older than he was, and Haley? The day Haley got her new cell phone, she had dropped it in the toilet. What gave her the right to watch him? Nothing. Walking home from school, Iggy decided that he wouldn't let Maribel and Haley boss him around. They might think they were in charge of him, but they weren't. They might think they could ruin his afternoon, but they couldn't. He'd show them. Actually, though, Maribel and Haley didn't try to ruin Iggy's afternoon. In fact, they seemed to be completely uninterested in Iggy or his afternoon. Iggy took 3 cookies for snack. Maribel did not say, "You know you're only supposed to have 2, Iggy." She said, "Do you want me to pour you some milk, Ig?" "I can pour my own milk," said Iggy firmly. "Okay," said Maribel. He spilled a little. After snack, Iggy said, "I'm going to play Monster Truck." Maribel didn't say, "You know you're not supposed to play computer games in the afternoon, Iggy." She said, "Okay." And then she said, "Ooh, Haley, look at this cute shirt." Iggy played Monster Truck. He played for 1 hour and 10 minutes. He was only supposed to play on the computer for 1 hour, but nobody stopped him. He kept looking at the clock. 9 minutes. 10 minutes. Where were they? Iggy got up. He went to listen in the hallway. "So then she said, 'Kylie, you can't wear those. It's against the rules.' And then," Maribel paused. "Iggy, stop listening." "I'm not." "Go away or I'll tell Mom you bugged us." "What? You call that watching me?" Iggy yelled. "I could be dead for all you know." "Go away." Oh. Iggy stomped as hard as he could into the nearest room, which was the bathroom. and slammed the door. He locked it too. So there. They didn't want him around, he'd stay in the bathroom. And then when they had to pee, he wouldn't let them in. So, Iggy flushed the toilet, flush. Iggy draped toilet paper over the water to see if it would float. It didn't. Iggy put 8 drops of shampoo into the toilet, flush. Iggy got bored. He went to the sink part of the bathroom. He turned Maribel's toothbrush upside down so that the brush part was touching the yucky part of a toothbrush cup. So hot. He brushed his hair with Maribel's hairbrush. He wished he had lice. Not really. Iggy turned the water on and waited until it got warm. Then he washed his hands. He turned the soap around and around until his hands foamed with millions of bubbles. He tried putting some on his chin for a beard. It dripped off. It was too watery. Shaving cream would be better. His dad wouldn't care if he used a little bit of shaving cream. Sometimes when his dad shaved, he gave Iggy his own glop of shaving cream to smear around. This was just the same thing, only without Dad. Iggy found the shaving cream. He shook it the way he'd seen his dad do, and then he sprayed. Whoa! That stuff really flew. Iggy wiped it off the wall and put it on his face, patting it into a beard shape. He laughed. So this is what he was going to look like when he was an old guy. Better put on a mustache, too. This right here, this is when Iggy began to lose his mind. How about a little bit in his hair to make it white? Did he ever think, maybe I shouldn't? No, he didn't. He needed more to make it really white. Yeah, that's it, all over. It was like he forgot there would be time after this moment. Iggy looked in the mirror at his white beard and his white mustache and his white hair. He still looked like a kid. He needed wrinkles. He opened his mom's makeup drawer. Yeah, the stuff she put on her eyes, eyeliner, cool. He gave himself a lot of wrinkles. Arr, he mumbled like an old guy. Iggy's mom's car pulled into the driveway. Darr, he groaned. He was really old. Iggy? Called Maribel outside the door. Are you okay? Gasped Iggy softly. Iggy, did you hurt yourself? What a great idea. Blood. And here was all the lipstick in the world just waiting for him. It was like his brain had gone on vacation. Iggy drew a trail of blood down the side of his face. It seemed small, more like a trickle. He didn't want to wreck the wrinkles or the white hair, but it was a shame not to be bloodier. Arms. Iggy pushed up his sleeve and drew an enormous gush of blood on one arm. It looked like someone had tried to chop his arm off. Chop. He drew a big circle of blood around his neck. Someone had tried to cut his head off. Fine, too bad. The top of the lipstick had snapped off. He could have done his stomach. He moaned, staggering around the bathroom. They got me. I'm home, kids, called Iggy's mom, coming in the front door. Mom, shouted Maribel. I think Iggy's hurt. He's in the bathroom crying and I can't get in. Now, most of Iggy's brain was on vacation. The only part still at work was the hand moving part, because what Iggy did then was flip the lock on the bathroom door, fling it open, and jump out into the hallway covered in shaving cream, eyeliner, and lipstick. Ah! He bellowed. Chapter 10. Extenuating circumstances. Actually, there are 0 extenuating circumstances in that bad thing. At least I can't think of any. It wasn't as if anyone had locked Iggy in the bathroom. It wasn't as if Maribel and Haley were giving Iggy a hard time or bossing him. No, the truth was that Iggy was bored and lonely, so he went into the bathroom, and while he was there, he lost his mind. However, I would like to point out that he didn't do anything terrible. Anything amazingly terrible, that is. It was not so good that Maribel cried, but she only cried for a minute or 2. Definitely wasn't good that his mom dropped her coffee cup when he jumped out of the bathroom, but there was hardly anything in it. The worst thing was the lipstick. The lipstick was ruined. His mom was pretty upset about that. She wasn't happy about the eyeliner either, but it wasn't ruined. There was just less of it. The lipstick was bad. Iggy had to buy a whole new one with his own money. Iggy figured that a lipstick would cost the same as a marker, but it didn't. It cost $13. That was when Iggy wished a lot that he had not gone too far. But is this terrible? Really terrible? I don't think so, and I will tell you 2 reasons why. Number 1, ruining lipstick or eyeliner is not life-threatening. Wearing that stuff is probably bad for you anyway. Number 2, sometimes when people lose their mind, they do way worse things than Iggy did. Like, for instance, they write with the lipstick on the walls. You know who I'm talking about. At least Iggy didn't do that. Unfortunately, neither of these things is an extenuating circumstance. If you want to find out what Iggy does next, you will have to read the book yourself. So now's the time when, if you have any questions. Oh, I did just see a question. Let's see if I can get that question back again. Just saw one question and then it went away. Let's see if I can get it back again. Hey, everybody says, the question that I just got was, would I like to see more of my books turned into movies? Yeah, of course I would, because I've had a book turned into a movie, and it was just the most amazing experience. Because like the idea that something that starts in your head, like something that starts in your imagination, is then turned into this world in a movie, that's pretty cool. And so I would like to see more of my books turned into movies. You know, people like movies, and it makes them really happy to watch movies. I mean, I hope it makes them happy to read books too, but I could really go for that. And I kind of think it's going to happen. Not to spill any beans or anything like that. Does anybody else have a question? Do I prefer writing a standalone book or writing the Ivy and Bean series? Oh, well, okay. I mean, I like writing pretty much anything, but I think kids really like series, you know, like Iggy here is the beginning of a series. I'll show you number 2. Number 2 is going to look like this. Here's the cover. I can't really see it. It's Iggy is better than ever. And it's more of his adventures. I just think it's fun for kids to get to know a character and then have that character move on to more and more adventures. And it's kind of fun from a writing perspective, because then you know your characters too, and you don't really have to spend a whole lot of time saying, okay, well, Ivy had red hair and she was kind of quiet, but she had lots of ideas. And Bean was like a wild, crazy girl who liked to run around and yell and scream and stomp in puddles. I don't have to say that. I don't have to create new characters each time. I've got those people. So I would say, from a writing perspective, standalones or series can be almost equally good. But from a reading perspective, I think it's nice to have a series. What's my advice for a young writer? Okay, my advice? I mean, I guess I could say you got to sit down and write every single day, but really my advice is more like advice about stories. Anything in the world can be a story. It doesn't have to be big. It doesn't have to be important. It doesn't have to be like an earth-shattering event with like this stunningly complicated plot. It can be anything. You can like climb Mount Everest and find a pot of gold at the top, and it could be a boring story if you tell it in a boring way. And conversely, you can like ride on the bus to the supermarket and it can be a great story. It's just all in how you tell it. So my advice to a writer is not to wait for something super exciting to happen to you so you could turn it into a story, but start thinking about the stuff you do every single day as a story and using it as a story. And also the great thing about that is you get to improve reality by making up good endings for it. Okay, I got another question here. Will you be writing any books with the characters? We know that, oh, am I gonna stick my darling characters into this pandemic? Well, not Ivy and Bean for sure. Ivy and Bean don't live in pandemic land because I think the 12th book actually is going to be the last book, that one I showed you the cover of, this one, and that's coming out next year. But it takes so darn long to write a book that book was written long before the pandemic happened. Iggy might have some fun things to do during a pandemic, but I have recently gotten a great pandemic idea, which doesn't apply to any of the characters I have ever written about before, but I think I could use it in what one of the previous questioners called a standalone book. So we'll see. Did I write a lot of stories as a child? This is from Becca. Okay, I have to admit no. Because writing was very unsatisfying to me as a kid. And the problem for me, I think, was that I was a huge reader. I read a lot. And so when it came to writing, what would happen is I would read a book. Oh, and I'd think, oh, I love this book. I'm going to write me a book just like this one. And then I'd sit down and I'd try to write something that was like exactly like the book I'd read. And of course, it was a total failure. And then I would thought to myself, I can't write. I'm not a good writer because it wasn't like the book I had read. When the real answer is you don't try and copy somebody else's story. You make up your own stories. But I didn't know that. So I took that to mean that I was a really bad writer. So I didn't really start writing until I was in my 30s, until I was an old grown-up person. But I think as long as you are more sensible than I was, it's really great to get started because, there's only so many stories I have time to write because I'm already so old. Get busy, people. You're young. If I could pick any author to collaborate on a new story, who would it be or why? Would it be a children's book or an adult book? Wow, that is an interesting question. I've been a writer for a long time, and it's pretty rare that somebody asks me a question I've never been asked before. I want to ask back, does it have to be a living writer? Because if I could collaborate with Charles Dickens, I would do that in a jiffy. He's a writer who has been dead for like 150 years. So that's not very likely, but he would be my top number one choice if I could collaborate with anybody. But collaboration is really hard. I can't imagine how that would work. Maybe I could like have a seance and he could tell me a few story ideas and then I would be able to write them down, but I would probably pretend that I had thought of them myself. Ooh, tough question. As for children's book writers, I would want somebody I really thought was funny. And in some ways, when you work with an illustrator, you are collaborating. So, Sophie and I are collaborating on the Ivy and Bean books, and Samuel Ricks and I are collaborating in a way on the Ivy and Bean books. But I've never really thought of that, like being in the same room with somebody and writing a book. Intriguing concept. Okay, I got another question here. Sam wants to know if I prefer to write fiction or nonfiction. Oh, fiction for sure. it was really fun to write a book about fortune telling. And I wrote a book about fortune telling that was nonfiction, and a book about opera that was nonfiction. But it was, writing stories with imaginary characters, that's way more fun. Of course, at the center of every fiction, there's a bit of truth. You get the idea from somewhere. So it's all about manipulating that real thing into a story. That's what's interesting to me. How do you write a fascinating story? That's what I love, that question. The question here is, do you get to collaborate with the illustrator Sophie Blackall on how you see the Ivy and Bean stories? Oh yeah, we did it for a long time. Publishers go to a lot of trouble to keep writers and illustrators apart because they don't want us, going off and doing our own thing and changing the book from what the publisher expects it to be. But yeah, at this point, we do collaborate we get ideas. I tell her what my idea is, and she then works with it. And of course, it's a kind of collaboration. Sometimes if I've written something and she doesn't know what the heck I mean, we talk about it and I explain it. But also sometimes I need to change what I've said because there's a better way to picture it visually, and so we work together like that. Also, Sophie and I have a great time doing events together too, which is another form of collaboration. So somebody has said, I can't believe you read people's palms. Do you still read palms? What's the most interesting thing you've read on someone's palm? Well, there's the problem. I do read palms. I would not say I'm extraordinarily good at it. The problem with palms is you can never tell. The time frame is really bizarre. Like you see something and you think, is that going to happen in 10 years or 20 years or like 50 years? It's a little upsetting. But yeah, the problem with palm reading is that if you get it right, you know a little bit too much about somebody, and then you kind of know their secrets. So yeah, I've seen some stuff that I could tell what it was, but I didn't know how to say it to the person. I don't think you're going to be married to that person for very much longer. You can't really say that to somebody you don't even know, and you can't say it to someone you do know either. Yikes, this is why I shouldn't be a fortune teller. It's much easier to be a fiction writer. The question is, how do we move kids from technology to books? If I had the certain answer to this question, I'd be doing great. But I would say by making books fun, by having it be actually competitive in terms of entertainment, rather than books being experiences in reading about other people's sorrows and woes. How about funny books? How about books that are actually equally entertaining to technology? That would be my recipe. I don't know if it's possible. I hope it is. Any other questions out there? Oh, here's one more. Do you always have stories running through your head, or do you wait for inspiration to hit? Yeah, everything's a story. For me anyway, there's stories everywhere. Of course, I'm a terrible spyer on other people. Like there's my neighbors. I look over the fence. I see what they're doing. There's a story everywhere you look. All you have to do is watch people for 5 minutes and you find out a lot about them. There's a story. So I don't wait for inspiration. I gather ideas, I write them down in a notebook. And then when I am looking for story ideas, I go through my notebooks and there's remember that guy you saw on the subway? Huh, write about him. Huh. So stuff like that. Oh, here is one more question. One of my favorite books of all time was The Guernsey Literary and Potato Peel Pie Society. Have you ever thought of writing a follow-up? That was a book I wrote for grown-up people. And if there are grown-up people out there, that's the answer to that question is no, because that book was originated by my aunt. She had the idea, she did the research, and then she got sick and I finished it for her. So I really feel like that idea belongs to her and her memory. So I'm not going to write a follow-up, even though I know a lot of people would really like me to. I think there's your standalone book, I think.
Annie, I wanted to just hop in right now and thank you so much for your time today.
Of
I'm not
course.
gonna lie, you had me in stitches at some of it. You're very entertaining and funny, and I hope that you'll come back again next year during our readathon. And hopefully we had a good turnout. I know that people were saying lights out around here, so I think we had a pretty good turnout considering we're in the middle of a hurricane. So
Yeah, good. I think you guys did great. You've combated the elements.
exactly. Well, you were phenomenal. We're so grateful for you, for your talents and your energy today. And we look forward to having you back again soon.
All right, great. Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys.